Hi, I'm Louisa Sidrabat, a liquidator and bankruptcy trustee. Today, I have some very exciting news for you. On the 10th of December 2020, Parliament passed the new Small Business Insolvency law reforms. This means from the 1st of January 2021, small businesses will have two new processes available to them for dealing with their affairs if they run into severe financial issues. The first is called Small Business Restructuring, and the second is called Small Business Simplified Liquidation. Now, the main body for liquidators in Australia, which is called ARETA, the Australian Restructuring Insolvency Turnaround Association, has pointed out to us that there are some issues with the way that the Small Business Simplified Liquidation rules have been drafted, or laws have been drafted. So right now, I'll park that and I'll come back to you with further information once those issues are resolved, and hopefully they will be resolved. So today, I'll talk to you about the new small business restructuring process that will be available from 1 January 2021. Firstly, who's eligible to use it? It's small businesses who are incorporated, so they have to have a company or be in a company structure. Typically, the easiest way to tell this is that it ends in Proprietary Limited or Pty Ltd or something like that. Secondly, they have to have debts of $1 million or less. This includes secured and related party debts, but excludes contingent debts. Thirdly, they need to have paid all their employee entitlements that are due and owing, so typically wages and salaries and superannuation. They have to have paid them in full. And they also need to make sure that all their ATO lodgements are up to date. Now notice that's lodgements, not payments. So it does mean that if the lodgement's up to date but payments are not, they will still be eligible to use this system. Now, I did an earlier video that set out the main process through which a small business restructuring will happen, and that's essentially the same in the version of the law passed. Now, what I wanted to talk about was the impact of small business restructuring on various stakeholders. So, for the small businesses themselves, this provides them with a way to try and survive, if they can, without having to close down their business. This is probably going to be most relevant to small businesses who are only or primarily COVID affected, or otherwise have a solid core business that would be profitable if not for COVID or some other potential one-off or some other type of event. If the small business has no good core business to start with, this is probably not going to help them. But if they do, this could be their lifesaver. All right, so that talks about the business owners a little bit. Unsecured creditors. So unsecured creditors are actually given the right and power to vote on the restructuring plan that the business puts to them. I strongly encourage all creditors to use that voice. This is because if they want to support the business and its restructuring plan, for example, if they think it's worthwhile to support and might provide a better payment ratio or prospective return to them for the debt they're owed, compared with, say, the liquidation of the business if they couldn't get a restructuring plan approved, or for some other reason, the director or the customer might be a good customer and they might be COVID affected and the creditor thinks that that business could recover. However, if creditors don't like the restructuring plan put to them for whatever reason, and no reason needs to be given by creditors as to how they choose to vote, they can vote against it. For example, if it doesn't provide a good enough return for what that creditor wants, or for some other reason. Sometimes when there has been a complete breakdown in the relationship between the creditor and the customer, sometimes the creditor is just so fed up that they choose to vote no anyway. And creditors are entitled to vote yes or no, howsoever they like, without providing a reason. Now, secured creditors. Secured creditors do need to be careful about this process. They can still participate, but they do need to be aware that if they agree to the restructuring plan, they are bound by it. Now, that might have flow-on implications for their security and their rights under their security. So while secured creditors may still want to be participating in the process, they do need to be careful about their rights. Employees. Employees, as I mentioned before, will have all their due and payable entitlements paid in full in order for this process to even exist, which means that they're looked after, so they're not owed superannuation or anything like that during the process. They need to have their entitlements paid up to date. The last group of stakeholders I wanted to touch on today is related party creditors. Related party creditors will not be entitled to vote on the plan either way. And also, it looks like they're not even entitled to receive information about the process as it goes along. Now, this is in some ways a pro, in some ways a con. In some cases, related party creditors are controlled by the same director, in which case the director may not have too much issue with the related party creditors not voting. Sometimes they might, and I don't want to diminish the fact that related party debts, when accounted for properly, are still genuine debts. Now, what could happen is there could be a situation where related companies do provide goods and services, have these genuine debts, but don't get a say in the process. In fact, that will happen because that's the way the laws are written, but there's nothing we can do about that because that's the way the law's been written. But related party creditors should be aware, and directors of company groups should be aware of that as well. There'll be much more information to follow. I'll be putting out some information summarising the processes, trying to help the people who are eligible to participate to put this in place and give it a go to try and save their companies. If you have any questions at this stage, or if you or someone you know might be eligible for this process and want to find out more, drop me a note and I'll try and help you with everything that I know at this point.